Ferguson protests and the riots. And this time I want to focus mostly on the purpose of the protests and the consequences. The first point that I'd like to make is that protesters should not have the right to intimidate, extort, or even inconvenience other citizens. That's not the reason why we protect their right of free speech and freedom of assembly. The reason is that when people are free to express themselves, communicate their ideas, and to assemble to talk about social issues or public policy issues, it is more likely that the truth will be arrived at. That's why it's guaranteed in the Constitution. It has nothing to do with inconveniencing, intimidating, or making life miserable for other people. It has to do with free communication and how that makes it more likely to arrive at the truth. And therefore, when we make decisions on the limited public policy issues that we should have in a constitutionally limited republic, that those decisions will be more likely to be right. It won't guarantee it, but it'll make. So that is the foundation of why people have these rights. It's not so that they can run into this, obstruct the streets, make it impossible for anybody to go anywhere, to get to their businesses, make people have to close their businesses. It has nothing to do with that. So that's the first point that I'd like to make. Also, obviously, it's not there, you don't have that right so you can serve as cover for vandals and criminals because there's so many people that the police can't handle the situation. So this is the legitimate reason why we have this right to a free speech and assemble, but it has nothing to do with the way it's being used by the protesters. As I explained in my talk on August 20th, that those protesters were protesting before they had the facts. It turned out that they had all the facts wrong, and they were protesting to try to intimidate the grand jury and make it more likely for them to indict Wilson. So they failed in that pressure, but that was their purpose. These other protests continue to have the same underlying principle guiding them. And this is unifying all the protesters and the rioters, which is they don't believe in respecting other people's rights. The protesters want to do it legally. They want to put pressure and intimidate and inconvenience and violate other people's rights legally. The rioters are just rampant criminals, and they're willing to violate the criminal laws. And often it has nothing to do with the public policy at all. It just has to do with them wanting to get some free stuff. So that's what's going on. And I explained that in my talk last week. So before we continue, let me take a little glass of water here. As I explained before, racism is always irrational. And the problem with these protesters is that racism is rampant, so they don't go by the facts. Judging people based on their race is not the most effective way of judging people. You should go by the facts if it is a question that you want to know the truth about it. However, many people do judge based on race. So that has some consequences. It means that in life, you are going to be judged sometimes based on the collective of which you're a part, the group from which you're a part, and you're going to have to carry the baggage, both negative and positive, regarding whatever group you're part of. If you're a Muslim, or if you're white or black or whatever, you're going to have to carry that, and that's just the fact of life. So this is something that you should be aware of and deal with it. You don't have to be complaining like all these black people about how people treat them badly. Well, to a certain extent, it's their own fault, because their brand name has been damaged by all these actions, and they're reaping the unjust and sometimes just rewards for this bad branding. Now, the proper use of race can be true in certain limited contexts, and it has nothing to do with knowing the truth. It has to do with guessing what is the probability of a situation. So if you meet a Muslim, it's more probable that they will not believe in respecting the rights of women. But that doesn't mean a rational person doesn't say they know that that person doesn't respect anybody, a woman's rights. They don't say that if they're rational, because they know they don't know. But if they have to guess and they have no other information, they may use it. So, for example, a famous example was when Jesse Jackson once said that when somebody was following him and they were at night, was walking behind them in a street where there wasn't anybody else, and the person was black, he was more afraid than if they were white. Now, that actually is a rational judgment. Not that he's saying that that person that's following him is going to assault him. He just knows that the probabilities are worse if the person is black, because they're more in numbers, in probability, more likely to commit certain criminal actions. So that's a proper use of the viewing a person's race, and shouldn't be confused with improper uses, which is when you claim you know the truth. That's the difference. Jesse Jackson isn't, or shouldn't be, claiming that he knows the character of that person that's behind him. He's just taking a precaution and walking over to the other side of the street. So that's what's happening there, and that confuses people sometimes. Now, there are people that are racist, and they think that they know a person's character or skills based on their race, and that's just simply irrational and is a disaster as far as using it to make your judgments in life. Now, let's get to the consequences of all these protests and these riots, because, as I said before, they have an underlying principle which is unifying them, which is that they believe in violating other people's rights. They like to lean on people. They like to pressure them, and sometimes worse, like the rioters, where they steal their stuff or abuse them physically. Now, the consequence of this, of all these protests, is obvious. The brand, the racial brand of blacks has been damaged innumerably, immensely. And the interesting thing is that the black people seem to have no knowledge of this, of what's going on. There is going to be so much hatred and so much so much push for racial decisions based on all these actions. And who is it going to hurt most? It's going to hurt the black people most, because they're a minority. If the rest of the United States, which is one of the least racist countries in the world, if you ever went around the world, you'd see that racism is rampant, that American racism is insignificant in the rest of the world. But if I go to South Africa, or almost any country in Africa, there is a generalized affirmative action program for all blacks. Everything is based on race. Now, we luckily have not devolved into that situation, but these protests and these riots are just pushing America in that direction to become really racist. And if we were really racist, who would suffer the most? It would be the black people. And do they know this? They have no idea that they are promoting their own destruction. So this is the thing that intrigues me. I have no idea why this is. And as I said before, what's the right thing to do? The right thing to do is everybody has to accept the fact that there are irrational people in the world that will judge them based on their you're weak and you're complaining and suffering. Just go on with life. Everybody has their advantages and their disadvantages. Everybody is dealt a hand, and it's to no good use to complain about the hand you were dealt. So just get on with life and stop whining. Those are my views. Thank you.